the floor will be open for public feedback. The main purpose of a public hearing is for the board to hear public feedback on the proposed budget and warrant. We will attempt to provide clarifications. This session is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. If you have questions that are not addressed to your satisfaction, please contact your board member, the board chair, or the SAU office. As always, we hope to maintain respect and decorum. The warrant. This year's warrant is organized in the following manner. Article 1 deals with choosing a moderator for the 2026 annual meeting. Article 2 is why the polls will be open Thursday, March 6th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. for school board elections. Article 3 deals with the operating budget. I will provide an overview of the proposed budget. Article 4 is the MVSD, the support staff collectively bargained agreement. Jessica Wheeler Russell, chair of the MVSD Negotiations Committee, will speak to this proposed agreement. Article 5 provides for a special meeting should Article 4 be defeated. Article 6, Sally Hirsch Dickinson excuse me, will speak to Article 6, which is a request to authorize the board to retain a contingency fund. Article 7, Dan York will speak to Article 7, which is a request to add money to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. Article 8, Melissa Muzzy will speak to Article 8, which is a request to add money to the Maintenance Expendable Trust. And Article 9 includes boilerplate language that allows for other business to be addressed at the annual meeting. So we'll start with, excuse me, Article 3, which is,
That's the script about this. That's just a precursor and then it gets into the line items.
but I need to read Article 3.
Sorry.
That's okay. Article 3 states, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $51,655,151 for the support of schools, the salaries of school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of said district. The article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. The school board recommends this article. In an effort to more succinctly and effectively review the proposed budget, we've listened to constituent feedback. Rather than addressing every single line in the budget, tonight we'll be discussing major budget influences and looking at projected expenses and changes from this year's budget by reviewing each function and providing relevant context. There will be time for questions at the end of this presentation. The overall increase to the proposed operating budget is $3,357,043, which represents a 6.95% increase. Comparing some of the main drivers to the overall net increase gives additional perspectives to consider. Projected special education expenses are increasing $1,162,469. If you compare this projected increase to the overall net increase, special education expenses are 34.6% of the overall net increase. The, the increase in our non-special education health and dental coverage was 22.2%, or $964,365, which represents 28.7% of the total increase. We are looking to change healthcare providers in the hopes of saving some money and mitigating future large increases like we have seen over the past 2 years. The net increase for previously approved collectively bargained agreements is $240,592, which represents 7.2% of the total increase. The percent increase of the operating budget compared to last year's total approved budget is 6.95%, as I said. The three areas of increase mentioned previously account for 71% of the overall increase. That's the special ed, the health and dental, and the collectively bargaining agreements. The board and administration are consistently evaluating and monitoring longitudinal expenses. So, I'd like you to please follow along on the overview sheet of the 2025-26 proposed budget. So the following are areas of change. Function 1100, regular ed, page 2. We see an overall increase of $563,478 due primarily to the aforementioned health and dental increases, as well as separation pay for retiring teachers. Function 1210, special education, also on page 2. This function has an increase of $597,665. We see a significant increase to the tuition lines and the health and dental increases. These increases are based on changing student needs and are based on what we know about the student population at this time. Function 1211, extended school year, special education, also on page 2. The increase in this function is $149,297. Sorry. This is due to an increase in salaries, transportation, and out-of-district tuition. Function 1260, our ELL program, special education, also on page 2, has an increase of $8,003 due to an increase in benefits. Function 1290, other special programs, on page 2. The increase is $80,511, is due to the increases to health and dental. Function 1300, CTE education, also on page 2. The increase of $65,594 is due to tuition increase based on student usage. Function 1410, co-curricular programs, on page 3. There's an increase, in this function of $28,797 due to the increase based on past expenditures. Function 1420, athletic programs, on page 3. Overall, this function is increasing $29,665. This increase is due to salary and benefits increase as well as uniform replacement. Function 2110, school resource officer, on page 3. The increase of $6,089 is due to an increase in salary and benefits. Function 2120, school counseling services, also on page 3. There is an increase of $71,044 due to health and dental increases. Function 2130, health services, there's a slight increase in health services, $2,859 due to an increase in benefits. Function 2140, special education services, psychologist. The increase there is $17,429. It's due to health and dental increases. Function 2149, special education services, behavioral, on page 4. This function sees an increase of $8,149. The increase in this line is also due to the increasing costs of health and dental benefits. Did I read it wrong? Okay. Function 2150, special education services, speech, on page 4. This function sees an increase of $32,368 due to health and dental costs. Function 2153, special education services, hearing and vision, also on page 4. The increase there is $18,374 due to health and dental increases. Function 2190, student support services on page 4. The increase there is $42,754, again, due to the cost of benefits. 2110 and 2111, instructional staff mentoring on page 4. The increase there is $1,732 due to the cost of benefits. Function 2212, curriculum development. The increase in this function is $48,849.50 due to the increase in salary and benefits. We had been able to use grant money for this over the past few years, but those grants are now closed. Next is 2222 function, media library services on page 5. The increase there is $7,986 due to the increase in cost of benefits. Function 2225, technology services on page 5. The increase there is $140,265, primarily due to increased licensing fees, a slight bump in the equipment line, as well as health and dental benefits. Function 2310 and 2311, school board services, page 5. The increase there is $1,551. The increase there is the liability insurance premium. 2312, moderator and clerk services on page 5. The increase there is $1,003, increase in the salary line that has not changed in many years. Function 2317, audit services on page 5. The increase there is $4,700. It's due to an increase in the fees that are charged to us. Function 2321, the SAU assessment on page 6. The increase is $228,122. This is the SAU budgeted apportioned out to the 2 districts within SAU 46. This increase is due to updated proration and preparing for separations. The SAU has seen 3 long-term employees retire in the last few years. There are also several current employees that would be eligible for separation pay if they decided to retire at any point. This budget helps to build the foundation to prepare for that. Function 2410, Office of the Principals. The Office of the Principals function sees an increase of $89,728 due to health and dental increases. Function 2620, Operations and Maintenance on page 6. The overall increase there is $107,582 due to health and dental raises, as well as an increase to the supplies and purchase services line. Function 2630, grounds maintenance. The function sees an overall decrease of $14,000 due to reduction in the equipment line based on past expenditures. The function 2700s, all of the transportation services, the increase to the transportation functions total $542,756 due to an increase in special education transportation contracts, health and dental cost increases, and the vehicle camera line. Function 2900 is where the previously approved and collectively bargained agreements are budgeted. The total increase for this function is $240,592. Functions 4200, site improvement, and 4600, building improvement on page 7. These functions see an increase of $100,000 and $100,000 respectively. These changes are based on longitudinal and expected expenses. I'd like to look at the revenues, which are on page 8. Revenues continue to fluctuate year after year. This year, we see an increase of $521,957 in our adequacy funding due to, our adequacy funding due, and a decrease in statewide education property tax, or SWEPT, of $93,596. We anticipate a reduction in the local sources other than taxes of $126,880 and $13,950 less in the unassigned fund balance. We estimate the net overall, oh, sorry,
The unassigned fund balance there and local sources.
oh, can we go back? I was reading the wrong thing. So the unassigned fund balance, we are looking at $1,500,000, and other local sources, we are looking at a decrease of $28,992. Sorry. As always, district administrators and officials continue to advocate for revenue when legislation is brought forward at the State House. I can attest to that. Please let your voices be heard by your representatives in Concord as well. You can talk to me anytime. I now respectfully open the floor to comments so that the board may hear from the public. Thank you for your time and consideration. There we go.
Representative Louise Andrus from Salisbury. I'm a representative, but I'm here tonight as a disgruntled taxpayer. How do you expect us to believe this budget when the SAU and the school board withheld a deficit of $2 million from the taxpayers of the Merrimack Valley School District? I used to trust all of you. I've been coming to this 10, 12, 14 years. And even though we didn't agree, I always trusted you that you would do your job. And I look at it this way. If you can cut $1 million out of the current budget to make up $1 million of the deficit, then the budget is well padded, and I am questioning how well padded this is. As far as the state goes, I have been told the state is having to cut their budget a minimum of $500 million. So as far as expecting more out of the state, I wouldn't even consider it this year. And we also have consideration. We have the school, we have the towns that are going up, and we have the county. Everybody wants an increase. I understand it, but it's getting to the point. I realize there are many people who make big money, so if their taxes go up $500, $100, or $1,000, or $2,000, they don't care. But then there is the rest of us. We're the common, everyday taxpayer of the Merrimack Valley School District, and we cannot sustain what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon me? Go ahead.
I didn't know if you were going to respond.
Nope.
Pat Pike from Pinnacook. What is the definition of the collective bargaining costs? What's all part of that?
Do you,
So each year when we pass a collective bargaining, like the one that you'll see on this warrant has 3 years. So the year one, let's say that everything passes on March 6th, year one of the MVSSA, which is a total of $448,874, would be added to the line. And then, or the second year of another contract, we kind of go in a 3-year rotation. So that's what gets added together. What could be on year one of one collective bargaining agreement, year two of another, year three of another.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your time, because I don't have time to do it. So I really appreciate all of your time.
thank you.
I'd like to second that. I
you.
appreciate all of the time that you folks spend here, but obviously we're all stressed about money, right? I think we can all agree on that. And we see these costs going up. I see most of it around healthcare and understand we can't cut those benefits. We also can't cut special ed, and we understand that that population seems to be increasing. The cost of those needs seems to be increasing. Can you speak to what you folks are doing to prepare for that so that we don't have such an unexpected lump of cost surprise in future years?
Specifically about the special ed.
That seems to be where the big chunk of this increase came from. So I'd love to know how we're planning to mitigate that moving forward.
Julie, do you want to grab a mic?
Could you state your name and town?
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm from Pennacook.
Jen, your last name?
Chase.
Chase, thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Gaudette, Director of Student Services. So I have a little list in front of me of what I call active solutions. Just starting this year, this was my first year in this position, taking a look at that overage and you know, those rising costs for, in particular, out-of-district tuition and transportation. So some of the things that we've been actively looking into during this school year include looking at our existing programs. We have, at each level, we have some really specialized programs. So taking a look at the numbers in those programs, the possibility of expanding them, which would in turn support if we have a student who's placed out of district, getting ready to return to the public school setting. By expanding those programs, we could potentially program for them in-house sooner. In addition to that, we utilize the Medicaid to Schools program, so making sure that we're doing our due diligence with that program. Regionally, we're working with other districts around some transportation cohorts, potentially, where we could team up with other districts in the same situation. And then also the potential is out there, at least for communicating with other districts in our region, to look at like a collaborative program where potentially we could have some seats to place some students. That would be a cost savings compared to some of the out-of-district programs that we currently utilize.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hello, Dave Hemingway, Webster. A couple quick questions, and I will focus first on buses. There's been much in the past to do about having appropriate staff to be able to drive the buses, to get the right numbers of people, not being able to get a substitute when a bus driver couldn't make it. Just can you give a general where are we with all of that at this point?
Sure. We have had a shortage. We've added a couple of drivers recently, and the board just signed a resolution to get some of the 14-passenger buses that is going to significantly provide us some flexibility. So we're feeling like we're in a much better place having those two 14-passenger vans that you don't need a CDL to drive, so that kind of opens things up a little bit for us, as well as like I mentioned that we added a few drivers recently.
Perfect, thank you. And so my question then for busing and the budget that's in front of us is, do these amounts appropriately reflect changes in routes for reasons such as Clothespin Bridge being closed that I know our administration's reached out to a few different places within the district about? Does that change things since, for example, that basically cuts one of the routes in half in Webster?
I honestly, I don't really know how to answer that, but I do know if we're talking about cutting a route in half, I'm thinking, and I'm not the transportation director, and I don't think Noelle is here, but the potential for using maybe the smaller buses and rerouting that, she's very good at dealing with that. So I'm sure that that's something that they will be actively working on.
I just wanted to make sure that it was reflected in the budget and that it could handle that. So I will move then to my other question, which is 2225 technology. You said this was primarily due to license increases. So what licenses caused a 50% increase in that budget line item? And in considering that that is insane, what other options were considered to replace those license options?
So some of that is because we've been able to use grant funds and ESSER funds over the past few years as we have more access points and cameras. All of those require licenses. So beyond like the student information system, we have, you know, the things that are in this room all require licenses for those. So some of that, again, was because of the ESSER money that we've been able to sort of pick up some, you know, let's say some new digital cameras as opposed to the analog cameras that we had before. And I'm again, punching a little bit above my weight class. I'm looking at our tech folks in the back, but that's the main idea, is that we just have the, you know, increasing number of things that require those licenses, and we should be steady. It's not something that we can say, well, we just won't get licenses for the cameras or, you know, something like that.
So it would be fair to say then that instead of an increase in licensing costs, it's that we're now actually being required to pay the licenses that we got grants for previously.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Heather Wenchel Boscoin. I can answer a little bit of your question about the buses in Webster, as I am one of the drivers in Webster. All it's going to do is reroute me up Detour Road to Pearson Hill. So just my times will just have to be adjusted a bit for pickup. But it's not gonna, I've done it in years past when that bridge has been closed. You know, so we're not gonna cut the routes out there. It's just my times are gonna have to change, so.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Julian Ed Webster, you gave us this handy dandy sheet here with numbers. I love numbers, so it's right up my alley. I do wonder though, so the salaries for the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and the business administrator differ from the 12-3 financial packet that was for the SAU meeting on that day. So that the current salary numbers show a different number on that packet for the 24-25 adopted versus this sheet here. Just wondering why there's a discrepancy.
Is that the MV portion?
I don't know. Are you looking at the Merrimack Valley portion, or? I'm not sure what was in the 12-3 packet.
I know I'm looking at the salary superintendent, 2320, and there's a 111 for the BJ.
Was it the SAU board packet?
Yes,
From 12-3, it was the SAU board packet.
correct.
So the, all of those SAU salaries, 87% of them are paid from Merrimack Valley, and 13% are paid from Andover, because it's multi-district.
So this is the full and this is the MV piece. Is that the difference?
The MV piece is the one with the yellow column. I'm gonna pull up the packet that you're talking about right now, Julie, and see if I can.
It's on page 4, or, well, it might, yeah, it's on page 4 according to mine. phone. 25-26 proposed matches.
I don't have anything on there. Do you have? Julie, can I get back to you on that? Sure. When we figure out, thank you.
Thank you.
Becky Herman Loudon. I had one quick question to start. The SAU, the director and administrative assistant, is that a new position?
The Director of Student Services.
It says a new position being formed at the SAU. It was on there, director and administrative assistant, $31,220. Is that a brand new position?
I don't know anything about that.
So what page is that?
So I found it in this that was on the website, and it says, on the very first page, it says, Student Services, addition of SAU level director and administrative assistant.
What does it say on the front?
The front of this,
Yes. What's the date?
Well, that was one.
December 3rd, 2024.
December 3rd of 2024.
So the reason why I'm asking, I guess I can get to that, and if it is a new position, I'm confused why we're adding a position at the SAU if that's the case, but cutting teaching positions. Or we're not rehiring in teaching positions. And as much as I like Randy and Catherine very much so, I don't think, like with everything going on, that the SAU should be being considered to get raises this year.
Those raises were negotiated. So as with any other collectively bargained agreement, just like the collectively bargained agreement that we have with teachers, with support staff, and
When was that bargained?
Mine was a 3-year. I'm in the
Okay.
second year of a 3-year contract.
So I guess when I was going through this, I know it's a lot of work to do the budget, and I wasn't sure of the format tonight. So if you look at the overall grand total of the SAU budget, which I got out of this packet, which was on your website, the total was, the total additional just to the SAU was $257,000 from last year's budget. And my thought was that's a lot of teaching positions, or a significant amount of teaching positions that could be put into place. So I did write something up, but,
Can I speak to that point,
yeah,
though?
yes, please.
So
'Cause
the
that's what I was trying to figure out.
positions were moved from Merrimack Valley to the SAU.
Okay,
So there was an increase in the SAU budget, but a corresponding decrease in the Merrimack Valley budget.
okay,
Because instead of, if Julie's position, we used to have another person that was the director. When she left, we hired that as an SAU position. So Merrimack Valley actually got don't tell Andover, but MV got the better of the deal.
Okay.
Because they're now paying 87% of that cost as opposed to fully taking that on. And that was the increase, was moving positions from Merrimack Valley to an SAU level position.
so my suggestion, I guess, would be, I think there's a lot of administrative layers within the district. And I think a lot of things need to be looked at, because when I went through the budget and I looked, it's a lot of the same and not a lot of like thinking outside the box. And so my thought in going through it is to really look at each position and try and figure out, like, is this the best that's getting to the kids? Like, the kids are the main reason why we're all here, are the students and their success. And anything that we could do to help with their success and get rid of those layers, even getting rid of some of the layers, because then communication is better and it goes directly to the kids versus through all these other positions. So I would really urge you to like relook at the budget and look at the things that could be changed so it directly affects the kids versus going towards extra administrators. For example, when we were going through, when you said the grant ran out on some of the curriculum positions, well, maybe those curriculum positions could be done by teachers or leadership people in those positions working directly with Catherine, because as an assistant superintendent, curriculum is part of that. So I really truly think we need to look at things more than just continuing with the same and figuring out what the problem is so that we can solve it and have like a sustainable future for all the stakeholders here. Because I know there are people that are struggling. And I do see a lot of things. I can think of a dozen things that we could change. And Randy, I have an email with all of those things in it that I'm gonna send to you.
Right. Sounds good.
But that would be my 2 cents. But I was confused about that with the new position at the SAU. Because it should be towards teachers.
No, it was moved the past year into this one.
Bill Hines, Bosquen.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, my age-old question, Andover tuition, I don't see the handout or the citation in any of the handouts here. Is that going to be in the book this year?
Yes, it will be. As I said, we do the billing for Andover, and that's one of the pages in the annual report.
Okay, can you tell me how much they're going to pay? We're looking, I guess there's 3 years that I'd like to hear. Last year, this year, and what this budget anticipates they're going to be paying next year.
So next year, their rate, according to the tuition agreement, I'm going to get close, it's around $16,900, right in that neighborhood, which represents 90% of the Merrimack Valley High School rate as since that is the tuition agreement.
And I assume, again, that's the unadjusted number.
Yeah, actually, they were only off by pennies this year for whatever reason. I don't think there was a major increase. I don't know if you remember what that number was on the DOE 25, but it's the CRTC adjustment, which was a pretty small number.
It's 23 to, it's not tiny, Randy. It's sizable. And this year they're paying,
I'll have to,
well, I can recite it if you don't want to look it up. It's $14,540
okay.
this year, $14,540 per student, and last year they paid $15,000 per student. $540, that's correct. Randy, board members, there is so much wrong here. The numbers just make me cry. First, I'm going to just flat out tell you that it almost rises to the point where I feel like there's a fraud going on here with what I'm being shown. You've calculated the tax rate here, and I'm going to assume that the tax rate estimates that you have put forth here are based upon the revenue page.
Correct.
So the revenue page at the bottom is the 30,900,000 approximate number. And I want to point out to my peers in this room that at the top of that column is a 1.5 million estimated fund balance. Mm-hmm. How can you put that on there? Do you really believe that we're going to come out with $1.5 million left over at the end of this year? We went into the year with
25-26, right? That's for 25-26.
right, but so what do you so you're yeah, this so you know that's not, I mean, you can't put that in there. I don't, if you're going to come out with 1.5 million, we're 1.5 million too much in the budget. You know, I realize that we've had some financial challenges. I get it. Things happen. Mistakes are made. I'm really ashamed about the transparency here. You heard Mr. Collins at the last year. I think Jessica has mentioned his name a couple of times this year. And this is just borders on fraud. And those are not the numbers that I see. When I calculate the numbers, and I shared them with you, I assume that you reviewed them, they are much bigger numbers in the projected tax rate than what you did, than what you have here. And
I'll certainly take another look before the annual meeting.
Thank you.
Hi, Ned Lazat from Loudon. So, to me, there's a few white elephants in the room. And the big picture is that last year, you came to us for a $3 million increase in the budget from the previous year. There was only approximately 200 people that showed up in the meeting, and we lost from holding it back by 80 votes. It was about 200 people that showed up at the voting last year. Pembroke Academy last year, they had their budget reduced $3 million. And I couldn't understand, and I have a friend of mine that works there as a teacher there and so forth. And they've been able to make the budgets cuts and adjustments and stuff like that. School's still going along fine, they're doing fine. We got an increase of $3 million. They got a decrease of $3 million. And I'm reading in the papers that we've had an overspend of $2 million, so that's a $5 million increase. And then you're coming back to ask us for $3.5 million more. That's $8.5 million in a season, okay? And that's insane. It doesn't compute. The problem is that you guys, we have this meeting now, right? And we have town meetings coming up in a month. And we have infrastructure things that have to be done and voted on and approved. And you guys get your slice of the pie, and then we have to figure out how to get our crumpets, okay, at the end. And you can't have students transporting to school if we don't have good infrastructure, if our roads are not up to kept, if our fire, if our police, things like that. And I remember talking to Christine Bell back 20 years ago. And in 20 plus years, you have not reduced or even approximated like working with the towns in order to find some sort of sensibility in finding a budget that we can work with. Because we're at a threshold of things that have to be done, and then people not affording their taxes. We had a big tax increase this year. I've heard plenty of people say like, wow, my bill went up. And then we've got more stuff coming up here. And at the end result, when I hear the terms, it's for the children, we can't even find a way for the children to afford to live here because they can't afford to live here. You know, because us adults, okay, and we were kids at one point in time, you know, our budgets and stuff like that, if we don't, if our job, we lose a job, if work goes, you know, slows down or something like that, we have to come back and make hard decisions. Not everybody gets health insurance, okay? And I don't understand, I mean, it's like a great, great job, but at some point, the benefits and stuff like that, and I know you want quality people, but geez, aren't you taxpayers too? Aren't you us? I mean, how can you sit there and tell us that within one calendar year, we're looking at $8.5 million? And that's even before we have our town meetings. In our town meetings, we have some big stuff that we're dealing with because we've got like fire and safety, you know? In Loudon, we're looking at, you know, what, a $1.5 million because we have to, for a ladder truck. And that's a big debate, all right? And then we've got other stuff going on, and it's just, you know, not once in over 20 years has this board ever said, hey, we're going to try to hold the budget. We're going to try to keep things down. You know, we're actually looking for ways to save money. You've never done that. And it's always gone up. I mean, like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we were somewhere below 40 million. Now we're talking 51 million. And then you were able to take $1 million or so out of a fund to figure out this other thing. At what point do you actually look at the spending and this, you know, the special ed and stuff like that and say, hey, this is out of hand. We got to stop this. We have to put a stop. Like, Randy, you said you put a spending freeze. Well, if it's special education and stuff like that, why are they being tuitioned out, you know, moved out someplace else and not handled here? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really wrong, and it feels insincere, and that's not even the right word. It feels wrong. And the thing is that most of the people here, and I'm surprised this place should be packed.
No joke.
It should be packed.
I was looking for fur hats, pitchforks, and shovels.
You know, when talk.
Where are they?
You know, but I mean, at some point, you know, the rest of the world is dealing with some budget cuts and stuff like that and having to make hard decisions. And is this all we can do as far as getting people to show up? Because we still have town meeting.
Thank you, thank you. We have people waiting, thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So the increase is just over 3.3 million. There is no $8 million over the course of this year.
My name is Kim Fortune. I'm from Webster, New Hampshire. It's so nice to see a state representative, Louise Andrus, here, recognizing that she has such an impact at our state level in regards to educational funding. We should all be thanking her and giving her a round of applause for attending tonight. All of us, she's our voice. My question is, how much of this district is coded in regards to population of students?
If you're,
I'll wait.
are you asking for the number of identified special education students?
I am.
So we are at approximately 29% of our overall population. And the total number, just need a moment here. The total number is 651 students.
651 students.
Yes.
Am I correct when I say the majority of the services provided to those individual students is supplied or supplemented by federal funding?
The majority of it is not, no. We receive our IDEA grant, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the grant that we receive to help fund special education. And this year we received $602,506.61 for our school-age population, which would address kindergarten through age 22. About 2 years ago, the law changed, and we now educate students who do not receive a high school diploma, who are on a what's called an attendance track, and we educate them now by law until they turn 22, versus what used to be 21. And we also receive approximately $26,000 through that grant for preschool population, which we have 2 preschool programs in our district, one in Boscawen and one in Pennacook.
Thank you very much. Now, just to clarify, what is the source of that funding?
What is the source of the IDEA? It's a federal grant. It's an entitlement grant.
Federal grant.
Yes.
Thank you. What is the federal support of those programs?
So again, we receive that grant, and then
Federally? Thank
yes, and then we also receive what is called special education aid, which is we receive, once we spend a certain amount of money on a student, typically it would be a student who is placed in an out-of-district program, which here at Merrimack Valley, it's approximately 1% of our population is placed in an out-of-district program because we don't have programming to meet their needs. So what happens is once we spend approximately 3.5 times the cost per pupil for one student, we can submit for essentially reimbursement for those services. And the rate at which we get reimbursed has decreased significantly. So for example, we used to receive, I feel at one point it was 80-something%. And in October of this year, we received a letter stating that the 80% was going to be cut to 66.38% of the 80% that we had expected or anticipated.
So in saying that 1% of the 29% is out of district, I just need to be clear on this.
1%
I understand
of
it gets confusing.
No, that's okay. So 1% of our overall population is placed in an out-of-district placement.
Out of that 29% that is in fact coded within the district?
And they are part of that 29%, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that would essentially be 651 students, am I correct?
Is the total identified?
So there could in fact be some fluctuation, am I correct or no?
It literally changes every day. We have students.
Every day?
Yes, we have students who are currently being evaluated, and if there's a meeting tomorrow to make a decision about their eligibility for special education, then that number would increase tomorrow.
So eligibility could fluctuate between September and June, am I correct?
Yes.
you.
So in special education, students can be referred at any time. Summer, it doesn't matter, and we have to act on that. We have federally mandated timelines. And so, yes, we test, if we suspect a disability and we decide that we're going to test that student, within 60 days, we have to meet to determine whether or not they're eligible. So at any given moment, we have many students going through that process who, by the end of that 60 days, could potentially be one of the identified students.
Thank you. Taking that further, how will the current pause at the federal level, which is not at this time decided, impact this budget in regards to the factual figures, to the actual budget being presented to the taxpayers at this time? Maybe the superintendent can chime in on this.
I didn't understand that question. Can you repeat that? Because I didn't.
Absolutely,
I
no
didn't
problem at
understand
all.
that question.
How will the current pause,
How will the current what?
pause,
Okay,
I seem to have heard
There
that
isn't-
a lot lately.
that was rescinded. There is no pause.
Thank goodness we have someone who we should be proud of the New Hampshire education system, Carolyn Levitt, right? Atkinson, girl of New Hampshire, press secretary,
Okay,
came from my most recent interpretation, from her most recent update, has said, although we need to hear that there has in fact been a judicial proposal, and yes, there was a pause brought from and to Monday as a deadline in regards to OMB at the federal level, which I'm hearing a lot of the funding in regards to at least 29% of this budget is brought forth from federal funding, has been paused momentarily, but not all. So in saying that, I would like to reiterate the question I asked, and I will go forth. It says, how will the current pause at the federal level, which is not at this time decided currently, recognizing that the federal level constitutionally supersedes the judicial, impact this budget in regards to factual figures to the actual budget being presented to the taxpayers at this time?
So the pause that you're referring to has in fact been rescinded. The
Only for OMB.
The factual
Let me be
budget,
correct.
you had your opportunity. The factual budget is what we are presenting to you at this time.
So there will be nothing changed.
The
Factual
The
figures.
factual pause you're referring to has been rescinded. Thank you for your question. There are people waiting.
I understand. I just want to make sure that all of us as taxpayers are being presented with factual figures to in fact be voted on. Otherwise, there is a conflict, and unfortunately, as presented by a gentleman over here, this could potentially be fraud and null and void. Thank you.
Let me assure you, there is no fraud here. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I brought this whole annual meeting back a good period of time, and we had to vote in July because we did not have factual figures presented to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Go ahead, thank you. Oh, can you hold on 1 second? Thanks, I appreciate your waiting.
Bill, are you still here?
No, I think he left. Oh, no, he's
I messed up, and so I want to address Bill, when Bill was making his statement, I looked back, I was projecting a fund balance at the end of 25-26, so I changed it. I will correct those numbers, and I'm doing it right now as we speak. I do apologize, and I thank you for, kicking my brain into gear. What Bill is talking about is when I put the $1.5 million at the top, that was coming off of the net assessed value that we'd have to raise and appropriate for taxes. And in my mind, I was thinking 25-26, but we need to look at the end of 24-25, because that would be the unencumbered fund balance that would be going towards. And we'll be lucky if we have any. I'm going to keep a 0 in there for the sake of coming up with those tax rates. I will correct that in the annual report, as well as putting this up on the website.
Thank you for that, Claire.
I did apologize. Yep.
He's okay.
Yeah, I said it's
He's
my
trying.
fault.
I thank you for that. I just went through the timeline with my peers to make sure that, because that was something that I was writing some clarifying notes on.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, the line where there's the 1.5, that'll come into play in November. And the reason that I'm so concerned about that, and so that the people in the room here could understand, is we're in the year on the left-hand column right now.
Right.
We're going to get to that end of that year. And I hope everybody here knows the situation. We've started the year $1 million in the hole. We took $1 million out of our expendable trust to cover some of the over expenditures last year. And I use that word carefully, because when I look at the financial statements, which I have done and taken a lot of care to review on my own, we didn't really overexpend last year's appropriation. We tiptoed right up to it, but we didn't overexpend it. The problem that I see here in the numbers are twofold. One, the revenues didn't come in. And I have a whole host of questions that I could ask you about that. I don't think there's enough time here tonight. But the revenues did not come in to the tune of $2 million. Furthermore, and there are some adjustments that the auditor put in here in the fund balance section. They're other. They're listed under other. And they're on both sides of the ledger, the expense side and the revenue side. And they're big numbers. They're $845,000 and they're $445,000 numbers. They don't balance out. So that made it worse even. So there's...
Thank you, Bill.
So there's a lot
Appreciate
there.
So can I,
Just one last little quick.
I know, but you
I'll
already
I'll be
spoke.
short. I understand. The auditor's report. Will there be an auditor's report in the book?
We just finished the 23 audit. The 24 audit may not be done in time for the annual report.
Skay, thank you for waiting.
Thank you. You're welcome. My name's Alexis Janot. I'm from Webster, New Hampshire. I don't really have a question. I just have a comment and feedback. I'm a parent of a child with special education services. My child struggles with intractable epilepsy. And I just want to say that this special ed department has been amazing to my family. And I cannot thank you enough for the support that you have provided to my family. And things are tough, trust me. I got laid off last week, and we have to make a lot of tough decisions. But I'm very concerned about cutting special ed. And I hear you about paying taxes. But I just want to say special ed from this team has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ma'am?
Well, I think he was waiting longer.
He was? Okay. I'll go along with that.
Thank you, ma'am. Mike Moffett, I'm a representative of Loudon. I have a question and maybe a couple quick comments. My question is, if the warrant articles fail in March, what's the default position? What do you do if this doesn't pass, what you're asking for?
So there is no default budget. So the budget, let's say that the school board presents this warrant as is and decide to move that forward. If Article 3 is not passed, there would have to, if there was something from the floor, it was referenced about Pembroke, who cut $3 million from their budget, and then after that cut 27 teachers from that $3 million. That would then be voted on. So at the annual meeting, the way that the annual meetings go, we stay and vote until something is passed. So if it's the proposed number, then that goes through, and if it's not, it's some sort of adjusted number.
Which would happen at the annual meeting?
Correct.
If the warrants fail. Okay, and the comments quickly. I know Louise, Representative Andrus, I've seen her standing outside in a snowstorm trying to get elected to this board. And I'll be very candid, Representative Andrus, Louise, is not part of the education establishment. She represents a lot of folks, but those folks aren't here tonight, a lot of them. Some are, some aren't. So again, as someone else said, thank you for standing up and showing up. Yes. And I have looked at all these numbers tonight, and thank you for going through those. And I have questions on so many line items, but there's not time, it's too late to really drill down and work on those. Like Louise, I have an interest in education. I've taught in public schools, parochial schools. I've taught in military schools, community college, university. I was elected to a school board. I was appointed to a school board. I've served 2 terms in the House Education Committee. So when there was an opening a few years ago on this board, somebody said, why don't you, for a year, to fill out a year position? I said, all right, I'll show an interest in that. But like Louise, I don't fit in the club. So I think there's maybe one board member who said, who voted for me or whatever. So I tried, and Louise has tried, and other folks have tried. So what I'm saying to you is thank you for your work, and what I need to say to other people are we need to give some other folks like Louise a chance. Is there a single fiscal conservative on this board? I don't know. I'm not thinking there might be. Is there a single Republican up there amongst the 17 of you? I don't know. I'm thinking that you're not representing the people in this SAU. Louise gets elected in November when people show up. And I understand about the ed establishment, because I've been part of it. So I want to say thank you for your work, but I'm also saying to other people,
Thank
you, we need some other voices and some other people. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Moffat, I just want to clarify, you do understand the board members are elected by
I used
their
to teach civics, ma'am. I understand
I
the
did
board.
too.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yes, I agree too. Yes, I understand board members are elected. The scenario I described, the board had a vacancy. They asked for people to volunteer to fill out part of a one-year term, which I did. I wasn't given a chance to do that. I would like to have had the chance, as Louise would, to go through these line items and challenge them. The governor of New Hampshire makes $144,000 last year, and nothing. And good on you. I know it was negotiated, but to make $172,000 to run an SAU, that's just one of countless line items that I wish some of us could drill down on and talk about. We're running out of time here, which is why I asked what happens if this doesn't pass in March.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lyle from Salisbury, and one of the things that I would like to point out, which I think Mr. Moffett knows, and also Louise Andrus, is the state of New Hampshire is last as far as what they contribute to offset our taxes. So where the fight should begin is down in Concord, not here. We certainly can look at line items, but it's down in Concord where the biggest part of this happens, and they also have a voucher scheme which is also taking our hard-earned money and pulling kids out of public school, which is increasing the cost to educate our students. Public education is a right. You have to accept everybody, and when you take a voucher and they can go to private schools that do not have to accept special needs people. So I'm just saying, look where the money really should be coming from, the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
Jen Mercer, Loudon. I was in the same position as Mike, excuse me, several years ago where I tried to get on the board by a vacancy position, and I did not have any educational experience, but somebody who worked for the NEA, conflict of interest. I'm gonna hold it. Anyways, they got in over me, but anyways, Randy, since you brought up your contract, what does it say about doing your job? As previously mentioned, there was a $2 million overrun with no transparency, so please help me oops, sorry. Sorry, I had to rewrite some of this because everyone stole my questions. So please help me understand how you think it's okay that if you don't do your job, you deserve an 11% raise, and that the budget at the SAU increases by 18%. After grossly mismanaging last year's financing and unscrupulously hiding this information from the taxpayers. When it all came to light, according to the newspaper article with lots of facts, the actual amount was $2 million versus $1 million. Not only that, I don't see a lot of raises for the actual educators that actually do the work for the children. It's shocking, and I'm actually truly disappointed in all of you, but more so those that I personally know. So yes, this year in your second year, your contract has been decided. What does it say about your job?
So first of all, let me address a couple of the things. I'm not sure where you're getting the 11% from, because this year to next year is a 4% increase, but.
One moment.
She said that's the discrepancy she asked
No,
about.
we have one person at a time.
Because I did the math in what I found from the budget online, which was the December 3rd, I think. I have too many papers to thumb. When I looked at the amount that did the math, it was 11%. So it must be a different number somewhere else.
Okay. We were transparent from the beginning as far as the overage. We used the trust fund in September. When it was brought up in November, on November 4th, that there was an additional $1 million. The board was informed, and then we needed to figure out what that meant and what that meant moving forward. So how that impacts future years. Do we need to have a special meeting? What are the options? Which is why, if you read the financial challenges statement, it outlined that whole thing. I'm not a Merrimack Valley employee. I'm an SAU 46 employee. We had a meeting at the beginning of December, again, where that was all laid out to them. If they wanted to act at that time, then they would have done so. But you know, the whole thing about lack of transparency and 11% increase and 13% increase and all of that, these were outlined all the way along. We had a public hearing to take money out of the two expendable trust funds to cover the $1 million at the beginning, slightly over $1 million, and went on from there.
So I don't have my calculator, but it says you're currently at 155 to be raised to 172. So that's a difference of 17%.
165.
Oh, so there's a typo in here then. Okay, so that's why my math doesn't work.
My 3 years, my first year was 155, then 165, then 172.
Okay.
For the 3 years. So there would be a
makes
total of almost 11% from year 1 to year 3.
Okay. So then the next thing, it's my understanding that if the budget does not pass, that it reverts back to the previous year's budget. Do you have an
No.
RSA that tells me what the
No, that
law
would
is?
be in SB2 districts. There's what's called a default budget, but for us, as I said to Mr. Moffett, it would have to be something that we would stay till whenever, until the body voted to accept a number. So if money was going to be added to the budget or money was going to be taken from the budget, it would be a vote of the folks in the room.
And that's just a simple majority, it doesn't have to be a
Yes.
certain percentage? Yes, still in the room. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, from Webster. This may be more appropriate for a little bit further down the warrant articles, but it brings up the point and the couple points that were made about the fund balance. In prior years, I have suggested that when you're filling things, for example, the maintenance trust fund, that come not from the unassigned or the fund balance, but that be normal and appropriated. And especially in this case where you've drawn that down to basically 0, and you've just stated you expect that to basically be 0, I don't see how you can possibly say that you're going to take those out of the fund balance. And in your financial statement, when you had the $2 million that you were explaining, you stated that part of this is also that you haven't had a large enough fund balance to be able to maintain and work around some of the issues. Now, I'm the chair of the select board in Webster, and I want to briefly explain one impact that this has had. In the past year, for different reasons, but in the past year, we had a vast increase in the amount that we were paying to MVSD. That was beyond what we would normally have expected for an increase. We didn't have enough in our fund balance to be able to go through that. We almost ended up having to take out TANs, or tax anticipation notes, in order to be able to pay that bill. Fortunately, we didn't, and we changed our policy to increase the amount of fund balance that we now carry in the town of Webster. Unfortunately, that means we weren't able to give it back to our town residents in tax payments immediately, but that does put us in a better financial position going forward. As you've stated that you want to try to grow this, how are you expecting to do that, since A, you can't just add to it, and B, I see that you're still trying to take out of it to not account for the amount that you're putting into funds? And feel free to address that as a whole now, as a partial topic related to budget, and or further in the warrant articles. I just want to make sure it's an appropriate item to be discussed.
Yeah, it definitely hits on 3 of the upcoming, so I don't know if you want me to answer it now before folks have done.
However you find it the most advantageous and most transparent to put it into context when we get there, or now. It's up to you.
So
I
the
just wanna
MET,
make sure it's part of the topics.
the Maintenance Expendable Trust has $716,691 in there. And hopefully you grabbed the document that talks about the future of that. So to your point about overall the fund balance, and this was something that Catherine and I put out to the board about financial well-being in the district a while back, and that is, the recommended amounts of fund balance. Our target number is 10%. There's also an upcoming warrant article that is a contingency, a retained surplus, and that affords the board the ability for the unanticipated things, not things that are on the CIP or anything like that, but unanticipated things. That's your emergency fund.
Yeah,
So
and
that's what
that would also go back to the fund balance if not spent.
Right, and
Unlike the others.
at the end of the year, that's going to have to go back, and you can't have more than the 5% of the district's net assessment. So that's what that one is. As far as the other money, if there's not money there, then the money doesn't go into the expendable trust. So the special ed expendable trust, as you see this warrant, there's a recommendation for 150,000. At the board meeting last night, I suggested that the board may want to consider moving that to 300 because of some large capital projects, namely the high school roof coming up in the future, and kind of that new approach to looking at the MET and CIP. As far as, whether they get funded, if the money's not there, they don't get funded. If we had one from last year, that wouldn't be funded if we didn't have the money going in.
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm not talking about that there needs to be funding for the maintenance trust fund, which there absolutely does, and there should be, and that's definitely appropriate. I'm talking about taking that from unassigned fund balance, so you can say that you're not including it in the tax rate, not including it in taxation, not including it in appropriation, when you're saying that you still need to grow the unassigned fund balance that isn't large enough in the first place.
Yeah, that's why I think in that document, it points out that the board would consider that at the end of the year, not that that was an automatic. So considering the scope of the CIP and what that might look like.
Thank you.
My name is Tara Gunnagle. I'm from Webster. I just have a couple of quick questions. I'll try not to drag it on. One question I have, I see this sheet with the budget increases, and the salaries look like they only go up, I don't know, well, it's less than 200,000, but then the benefits go up almost $1 million. So where does that come from?
So the salary line doesn't have the money that's in the 2900 function added in, because that's already part of the budget. So the benefits, in total, if we look at special ed and non-special ed benefits, it's about $1.5 million, which is why we've shopped, and we're hoping to be able to change providers and that we can save some of that money moving forward.
And then another question regarding the same thing. I've noticed in several of the categories, like student support services, there's only a $10,000 difference between salaries and benefits. Why is that? I mean, the benefits and the salaries are just about even. Why is that? That's double paying.
Well, I can tell you that a family, Kathleen, if I'm way off on these numbers, you can correct me, but like a family health plan that is a split cost based depending on the bargaining agreement is like $37,000 or in that neighborhood, so which is a pretty big number.
So do the, because I mean, where I work, I get benefits, but I also pay a lot for the benefits. So is there a copay?
Yes, there is a split depending on
the
which
job.
bargaining unit. Yes.
Okay. Yep. And another question, and I'm going to ask this lovely lady right here, who's the bus driver. I drop off a couple of my grandkids. I've never had a child in the school district at all, just because I never have any kids. But my grandkids, by a second marriage, I drive them to school. Now, when we get there, there are a couple of full-size buses there, and Webster School, and I know you drive a Webster bus. And there are about 20, 25 cars that people drop off their kids at school, and you get these school buses that, you can tell me how many people are on the school bus. 10, 12? How many?
If all of my elementary schoolers ride, I have over 50.
Really? Because I'm sitting there and nobody gets off the buses. So we've got 2, sometimes 3 full-size buses, and then there's a bus from the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or whatever it is, and then there's a small van. So, but I don't see a lot of kids getting out of it, and how come so many people are driving their kids to school and then picking them up in the afternoons? Because those families are paying for the school buses too. And while I'm on this, on the buses, we have contracted services. Do we own any school buses?
Yes.
Okay, so what are the contracted services? That's in the 2,700s.
Julie, do you want to address
Because
that?
contracted services are 842,000.
So that would be the special education transportation that I referenced earlier. And just maybe to give a little perspective of that 1% of the population that I referenced earlier that it would be placed in an out-of-district placement, that transportation cost, our highest for one student is approximately $85,000 for the year. So what happens is we always try to use our in-house transportation company. But of course, due to shortages with drivers and buses, we can't always make that happen. We access approximately, I'd say 11 or 12 placements in our state. And so what we have to do is then call around to our, transportation companies that we utilize, and first of all, see who has availability, and then we get estimates as far as, how much the run will cost us. And unfortunately, those runs can be very expensive. As I said, one student can be $85,000 in a year just to transport them to their program.
And so where, just, no names because it doesn't matter to me.
Of course.
But that 85,000, where does the student go? That is that much money.
Well, so as I said, we have, upwards, I would say at least 12 programs. I didn't think to really count, but I would say between 12 and 15 different private placements that we access, and they can span anywhere. Lancaster has an Easter Seals program that we don't tend to use too frequently, but in years past we've used them. And then there are a good chunk of placements on the Seacoast.
Is that a stayover?
No,
Or the poor
no.
kids have to drive almost
No.
3 hours to Lancaster and get there?
No, and we try to maintain a reasonable bus ride. In some cases, it does go over an hour, but they, these are day placements. These are not residential
Right, no
programs. Yeah.
residences. So those contracted services for 800,000, that's for special services?
Yes, special education transportation.
Now, the tools, vehicles, and cameras line, that's up 146,000. How much of that is vehicles? I mean, are we replacing vehicles very often? And do we have any of the smaller buses?
We do. That was, two of them were just approved last night. That's why
Okay.
I referenced the 214 passenger. So we
Right.
do a lease purchase, and that part of that increase is because we've kept that line where it's been, and it's not quite enough to give us the two buses. So typically it goes that we're on a replacement cycle. So we might be in, similar to how I was explaining the CBA, there might be in year one of a lease purchase agreement on one,
Right.
and then year two on another, year three on another. So we're replacing buses as we go.
Okay, I will ask you a question. Why do we need, how many students fit on a bus?
My bus can hold 77.
Okay, so why do we need 2 or 3 buses in our town if we don't have that many kids?
Because, as Randy said, the law states they can't be on the bus for over an hour. And so if I were the only driver in your town, it would take me well over an hour to pick up everybody and bring them to school.
Okay,
Okay, and we have the little van, is
Right.
our special ed bus out there. She actually
that's the one that says school bus on top?
Yes.
Okay,
She actually does 2 runs because there's not enough room on there
Right.
for all the kids that require transportation.
right. Now, how about the little white one? The little white bus?
From the YMCA.
Okay.
And that is before before school care and after school care. So those are the kids that don't ride. Sometimes they'll ride our bus if the parents are home, but that prior, like the parents have to go to work.
Right.
Before we're gonna pick them up, so they go to the YMCA. The YMCA brings them
The-
to Webster and also Boston.
So this is the Concord YMCA?
Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy.
No. Parents pay for it.
Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to ask. Well, I guess that's all. Again, I appreciate all your time too. I will ask something. It's probably not the right place, but I have a friend who was an employee driving a truck, and a school bus hit this truck, and the school board was heard it was a fender bender. Well, the school bus was totaled, and the mail truck was almost totaled, and the person driving the mail truck got seriously injured and is still will never be able to work again at the age of 50. The person in charge of the buses, I know that person is not here anymore, but shouldn't the people that are in charge of the buses, now this was, and it has nothing to do with this board or the school district, but a school bus hitting a mail truck should have made some news. It wasn't in the papers, it was nowhere. And this board, Roger Sanborn told the board that it happened because this guy happened to be a very dear friend of his when he worked with us. Why could something like that happen? That the school board was told it was a fender bender and the school bus was totaled. This is on the way from Loudon to Pennacook. Beautiful sunny day, dry land, dry grounds. Do we have a new person in charge of school buses this isn't going to be hidden again?
I can't speak to that. This is really about the 25.
And that's why I said I'm
budget.
probably out of line right here. But you are the school board, right?
They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, so
We are.
I was wondering, because how could the school board not have known about an accident like this between a mail truck and a school bus? I mean, I went to state police, I went to local police, I went to the DOT, and they had no records. So this is something to think about.
Thank you. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Hi.
Oh, no, she's next.
Rachel Boscoin. I'm a trainer over at Transportation. We have 58 pages of safety 1300 rules that we have to follow.
Heather,
Okay.
this
Yep.
really doesn't have anything to do with this
Well,
right now.
I'm just,
So,
I'm just gonna
thank you
tell
for,
her.
thank you for trying. Thank you
Okay.
for trying. Thanks, Heather.
I just wanted to inform the school board while I'm here that this
Thank you.
person
I appreciate that.
is devastating.
Yes. Thank you. It's your turn. Go ahead.
Hi, Stacy Jarvis from Boscoin. I just have a couple of, I think, quick, easy questions. On the budget, item 1290 is other special programs. Could you just share maybe what falls under that category? I'm just not familiar.
Is that Julie? 1290. Is that Julie? Julie?
Is that you, 1290?
No?
Oh, sorry, it's page 3.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, no, it's page 2.
Reading tutors. Julie, reading tutors and out-of-district tutoring.
Yes, so my apologies. So that line references positions like reading tutors, which aren't necessarily special education, but we do have several reading tutors throughout the district.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question is for item 2110, school resource officers. Do you know how many that covers? And is it just, I believe I've only seen them at the middle school and high school? If that's correct?
We do have 2, but we're currently, we only have 1. We haven't been able to hire for the other position. So it's left in the budget for the 2 positions, and if it's not filled, then we don't spend that
Oh, okay.
money.
All right, thank you.
Amy Corliss, Loudon. Can we confirm that there are 3 full-time teacher positions leaving Loudon for next year?
Yes, we will be reducing the LES classroom teaching staff by 3 classroom teachers.
Can you talk about the other elementary schools too, and what, if and what they're losing as well?
Sure. Actually, Loudon is, and certainly as the year unfolds, there could be potential changes that happen with population, but Loudon has seen a significant decrease in their population, and it is appropriate for us to be reducing those teachers from that building, and that will create equity among other buildings. In fact, Loudon and Boscawen essentially have the exact same population. Boscawen has approximately 2 teachers per grade level with 1 exception. Loudon has 3 teachers per grade level with, I believe, 1 exception as well.
So the other elementary schools are not losing positions right now?
We do not have position reductions planned for the other elementary schools this school year.
Okay. And do you know offhand what the class sizes will be changing to and what they are now, the ones in Loudon that are combining?
If you give me a minute, I can pull those up, yes.
And while you're pulling that up, how come the budget for Loudon Elementary specifically doesn't show a decrease of 3 positions? It's only $1,700. And 3 positions should be a heck of a lot more than that.
Do you want to speak to leaving cut positions in the budget?
So as we've talked about, you've heard fund balance come up a fair number of times, and the district's been running at about a 1% fund balance, which is not fiscally responsible. So one of the things that we've done is we're looking for strategic ways to cut without necessarily cutting those positions from the budget until such time that we can get closer to a recommended fund balance of closer to 10%. And by cutting those positions, you won't see a corresponding decrease in the budget. We're hoping to get to that point, that through our strategic budgeting and cutting down of positions, that we can build that fund balance up so that we're a little more fiscally responsible than how we've been running for the last large chunk of years, with about a 1% fund balance for an average.
That makes it very confusing to look at this and understand those changes. Just moving forward, maybe that would be helpful to not have it in this format. Maybe show the actual decrease and then explain that it's coming from a fund balance, but it's very deceptive. It looks like Loudon's going to be sitting at the same amount, when in theory, they're definitely not going to be running at the same budget.
Thank you.
Do you have the answer, or can I ask a second question?
I do. I have the class sizes if you would like.
Yep.
So currently we have 3 teachers for 35 students in our kindergarten class. That will be reduced to 2. In 2nd grade, there are 38 students with 3 teachers. In 3rd grade, there are 41 students with 3 teachers. And so those will all be reduced to 2 classrooms.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, but can you tell us if we are still paying an outside agency for para positions?
Yes, we are. We still have, I do have a number here. We started the year with far more, but we are down to 12 of our positions being contracted out. We have approximately 137 paraprofessional positions in the district, and now we're down to 12 of them being contracted out.
Do you know the hourly rate for the contracted?
It varies, but I could probably dig that information up.
I just wanted to compare it to the employee para rate. Do you know that off the top of your head?
I can get that as well.
Someone should have this that we know.
Amy, I'm guessing your concern is the fact that those agency paras are making more than our paras that are working for us.
A lot more.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's a concern that we share as well. The reality of the situation is, though, that we're advertising and we are trying to hire for those positions, and we're mandated to provide those supports, and we don't have people to fill them. When we are able to hire for those positions and we have an agency para supporting a student, we are able to notify the agency that we no longer need those services and we're able to replace them. And we've had some pretty good luck reducing our numbers in the agency paras since the start of the year.
I just would like to hear the difference, because I think I think a lot of the paras making, I believe, $16 an hour are not going to be happy to hear that you're paying the agency $50 an hour. Some of that is admin, and of course, it doesn't all go to them, but maybe if their pay was higher, you could get some better paras and more paras.
Yeah, and certainly you'll see in a later warrant article where we're bringing forward a new contract for our paras. We have tried to be pretty aggressive in paying them much closer to what they certainly deserve. The concern you're raising is one that we certainly share as well.
Okay, because I'd be happy to pay more on the budget if it was going towards paras and teachers. But when Randy says, oh, if the budget doesn't pass, we'll have to cut teachers, that feels threatening. That feels like that's what you're going to cut. Why didn't you say would have to cut administrators, would have to cut paper costs, would have to dig and look for cuts? You didn't. You said would have to cut teachers.
So 82% of the budget, somewhere around there, goes towards staff. So we can't cut enough pencils and paper to make up.
We could try, we could look, we could
Well-
dig. That's what we want to see you guys doing, is trying to not cut teachers. But you say you're going to cut if we don't pass the budget, which means you better pass the budget or we're cutting teachers.
And I didn't say we're cutting teachers. What I said was when Pembroke cut $3 million from their budget, that represented 27 teachers, and then shortly after that, more left. We have some of them in this room. We were able to hire some folks that happened to be in that situation. That's what they did. I didn't say we were going to cut teachers.
You're right, you didn't. I misspoke, you didn't. But that's what it sounded like. It sounded like teachers will get cut. If you come up with that agency number, can you just let us know, please? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Come on, Ray. You can do it.
She took care of 2,700 transportation services, and a lot of the things that I was going to say about that, I didn't say, but she didn't mention the fact of the salaries, $600 increase. The benefits, $142. So how come? That's what I wanted to say. Why?
Which one are we?
So which ones, Ray? What, can you?
2,700 transportation
Oh,
services.
2,700, thank you. I don't know.
You have the main one that has just the function total, because this is the full.
Yeah.
No,
No.
when you were reading that, I was looking for.
Okay, sorry.
I probably have it somewhere. You have a package? Not the
Hold, please.
I'm going to sit down a minute.
Otherwise, you'll forget what you asked, right?
I don't think I have a copy of that.
Oh, the 600 and then the 142,000. So the increase in the salary lines don't show up in that spot because of what's in the 2,900 function. So what happens, the 2,900 function is kind of like a holding place for salaries. So there would be the, whichever year of the contract it happens to be. And then that gets distributed to that. So the increase in the salaries come from that 2,900 and they get moved over to those other salary lines. So they're not there until things are approved and then they're moving forward. So that's why the benefits we know, so we were able to take the 22.2% and put that through all of the benefit lines, but the salaries depends on who falls in that line, and then the money is moved from the 2,900 function and put into that, into those salaries. So it's not that the salaries are just going up 600 and the benefits are going up 142,000.
Okay, I guess.
Yes, and, okay, hold on one second, Ray, because Julie would like to also,
I know she's going to respond to Amy's.
oh, so Amy, sorry. Julie's going to respond to,
Yes, so we were able to, I don't really have an average, but approximately $50 an hour is what we would pay an agency. That we're charged that hourly rate, which does include the benefits that the agency offers. And then through the district, an equivalent position would be approximately I'd say between $21 and $23 an hour, but that, of course, does not include the benefits. That's just the hourly wage. You're welcome.
Dave Hemingway from Webster one more time. As was just previously discussed, you mentioned that there were teacher positions being removed, but were left in the budget in order to be able to enhance the fund balance as you're trying to do. Roughly how many positions or how much of this proposed budget is for that purpose? And how much do you plan on adding to the fund balance by the end of this budgeted season?
So since this is for 25-26, right? So next year's budget, we're looking at probably 6 positions that we're not going to fill, that, people that have, retired or, moved. So that's the number that we have based on the openings and being able to look at strategically, as Catherine kind of went through some of those numbers for class sizes, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we had, 33 kids and, and 3 teachers necessarily. So but we're looking right around half a dozen positions.
And is that the only place that you are leaving stuff in the budget that you're not planning to fill or not planning to use?
Yeah,
Or
the
are you
6
doing
is
this across
district-wide. The only other thing that we may
I'm
have.
not talking about just positions, but I'm talking about stuff that's left there or slightly high to allow for increase in the unassigned fund balance when you are done the 25-26.
Right. So what we're hoping, is that we are able to switch healthcare and then save, some money and maybe sort of split the difference depending on, where we're getting, closer to a fund balance to have some financial stability for the district. So we do have some things like that, but there's nothing really that we've said, hey, here's a place that we can add. But again, as we change, if we're able to save, $400,000 or $500,000, maybe we can trim a little off of the budget for 26-27, and then still have some there as, to feed into what would hopefully get to the point of being a 10% fund balance, which that's going to take a number of years. This is not something that's going to happen. We're not going to go from 1% to 10% in a year or two. So it's definitely going to be a process, but I think being, strategic about how we're doing things and being mindful of taxpayer money, because having those emergency funds, the contingency fund and well-funded expendable trusts and the fund balance is really how we're going to have, healthy finances moving forward.
I completely agree with and commend that purpose. I'm still looking for when you're going through this, I guess, what is the range that you are planning or expecting that you can probably add to the fund balance coming out of this budget? That's about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Jennifer Chase from Pennock again. From where I'm sitting, it seems to me like you folks are doing the best that you can with the funds that you have. And I think that we've focused a lot on what can we get rid of out of the budget. it's clear that we'd have to get rid of people or benefits, which doesn't serve us, or programming, right? Like, are we going to disservice our children to save some dollars? I think that what we're not looking at is where are additional revenue sources possibly coming from. So I know that the lawsuit with the state has been hung up in I think the Supreme Court for a while. Do we have an idea on where that is in the process, or if there are other funding avenues that may be changing to help alleviate some of the concerns with the shortfall?
I can at least talk to, there are 2 lawsuits currently. Now, this has nothing to do with our budget directly. I'm just going to educate a little bit on that. There is the Conval case, which I believe just went through the Supreme Court here, and that will be decided. The Rand case was heard at the Rockingham courts, it's like a county level, in, I want to say, September, and so we're still waiting on that decision as well. Obviously, pending any decision, at that point, it would really go to the legislators. There actually was a bill that was introduced that I testified on, I want to say a couple weeks ago, at the state level that would actually increase funding. But again, that goes back to kind of what Tracy was saying is if the interest is to bring New Hampshire up to what, maybe other states do statewide to support their education system, you know, advocating with your state level legislators would be a good step to take. But that's the only piece I can talk to is the lawsuits.
Thank you.
David, I have an answer to your question. If we were to leave, if we leave the 6 positions that we're cutting in the budget at approximately $80,000 a teacher, we're looking at just under $500,000 that we would have towards the fund balance.
Hi, Mark Griffin, Loudon. The fund balance that you guys are talking about, where's that in here?
Coming into this year, we have a negative fund balance. So when I was saying a
Hey, but where is
1%.
It's not in here? It's not on any of the books that you show?
No, the fund balance is just what's left over at the end of the year as you're going into the following year.
Okay.
And so when I say 1%, that's just how much Merrimack Valley has typically had at the end of the year. And it's recommended that that's really between 8 and 17%.
But
To
so
be
it's nothing that we keep in like a fund that
No.
you guys can use?
No, we can't just take it and put it aside, although one of the articles that's coming up about the contingency fund, that would allow the district to take up to 5% of the district assessment and hold that for unexpected expenses, which is one of the things that we feel is a smart thing to do to be financially smart in moving forward. So that is why that warrant article's on the warrant.
Okay. And finally, with Loudon going down in population, that's in student population, right? Okay, so not to be inflammatory, but I don't think the education freedom accounts are a scam or a scheme that you called them earlier. It appears that people are actually using them, like myself, and sending my kid to a charter school because I'm sick of this. Thank you.
Hi, Jen Mercer again from Loudon. A couple things. So we talked briefly about being able to cut costs, and like pencils aren't going to cut it. So what are these 2 site improvements, 4,200 and 4,600? They're site improvement and building improvements for an increase of $100,000 each. Is that something that we can hold off and wait? I mean, we just got a new track, we just got a new scoreboard. Are these things that times like this, like that's pretty sitting right? I know, Fred, you've got a lot of stuff going on, but can that wait?
I don't know, Jen. It might be able to wait.
Can we look harder at a couple things like that? I mean, I know so you've got 275 already in the building and then 156 in the site. So you're asking for an additional 100 on each. Can we sharpen our pencil on that maybe?
So if I can, step in, part of that increase was the new look at use of the MET and the CIP the Maintenance Expendable Trust, and the Capital Improvement Plan, which Fred has now done sort of a 10-year plan outlined. And the increase in those lines was with this change in how we look at the Maintenance Expendable Trust for some of those bigger projects. So I think I mentioned before about the roof, the 1.8 million. We don't want to add that to the budget.
Absolutely not.
So that 100,000 on each of those lines would allow Fred the ability to do a little bit more from the capital improvement part.
For big projects, yeah.
Yeah, well, for some of those smaller ones to save the Maintenance Expendable Trust for those really big ticket items.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a few years, but I seem to remember when we started that, and Fred's been working on this capital improvement plan for a long time and doing a good job of it. But I seem to remember that's why that fund was set up. And I even heard somebody last night at the meeting say, why aren't we already doing this? Or aren't we already doing this? Like, that's what that kind of program should have been, trust fund should have been for, are the big projects. And the other stuff gets taken care of in the budget. That aside, back to my original question, is that something, I mean, you don't have to answer now, it's just something if we're looking to kind of, again, sharpen our pencils, is that something that we can do? Hold off for a year.
Some things you can hold off on, some things you can't, Jen.
I get it, yep.
Have you looked at the CIP?
I haven't recently, no, where is it? Is it on the website?
Yep.
Okay, I'll take a look.
I extended it. The town of Bosquen asked me to move it out to 10 years. It's very fluid, going out 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start that? Because I seem to remember it at one of the meetings 10 years ago, maybe?
We started the 10-year one in the last year.
But the capital improvement plan in general you started working on, was it a 5-year?
10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in the CIP.
Mm-hmm.
Millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Thank you.
We're sharpening as much as we can.
Appreciate that.
Come on, you can do it.
Got it.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to, okay.
Becky Herman Loudon. Can I just make a suggestion? So I know when Amy was up here talking about the Loudon Elementary School positions, and you said there was extra money in that line item, can we take all the extra money out of all the line items and make a line item that says extra money or fund or something, so it's more clear, so people actually know what they're voting for?
No, because that would make it.
That is my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to move on to Article 4 now, which is the MVSSA Collectively Bargained Agreement. Jessica Wheeler-Russell, who is Chair of the Negotiations Committee, will speak to this agreement.
Well, good evening. Let's see, article reads, to see if the school district will approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Merrimack Valley School Board and the Merrimack Valley Support Staff Association, which calls for the following estimated increases in salaries and benefits for 25-26, excuse me. $448,874 for the 26-27 year, $277,424 for the 27-28 year, $200,318. So the Merrimack Valley School Board and the Merrimack Valley Support Staff Association, or the MVSSA, have collaborated to bring forward a collectively bargained agreement, or CBA, to MV voters. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you folks tonight about an issue that affects every student, parent, and staff member in our district, our support staff. These individuals are the backbones of our schools, ensuring that students are safe, supported, and ready to learn each day. Support staff include our paraprofessionals, custodians, administrative assistants, bus drivers, food service workers, and others who contribute to the seamless functioning of our schools. The roles are vital, yet often undervalued. Support staff are often the first and the last faces students see each day. Bus drivers greet students in the morning, custodians ensure safe, clean, and learning environments, and paraprofessionals provide one-on-one academic and emotional support to students who need it the most. Like many districts across New Hampshire, we face challenges in retaining and recruiting support staff. Competitive pay is necessary to attract and keep skilled individuals who are committed to the success of our students. Without adequate compensation, we risk losing these essential workers to other industries or neighboring districts that offer better wages. It's like an overview of this contract. They're adding an additional paid holiday for Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. Health buyback increase from $1,500 to $3,000. A realignment of years of service and adjustment to longevity payments. Minor wording changes around personal days, accumulated sick time, and course reimbursement. And the year one will see an average increase of 8.63% in wages. I've already read all those numbers, so I can repeat them if folks would like me to. But in conclusion, increasing pay of our support staff isn't just about numbers in a budget, it's about valuing the people who make our schools successful. It's about showing respect for their hard work, attracting, retaining talent, and ensuring that every student in our district has the support they need to thrive. To go a little bit off script, I think we've heard tonight what our support staff mean to some of our parents, especially those whose students face different challenges, and all of our staff that, you know, our bus drivers, our food service workers, some of which who greet my children as they walk by our house during the summer while we're playing outside. These are our neighbors and our friends, and I believe this contract will show that we value their work every day. Thank you very much. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 4. Thank you.
Okay, then. Next up would be Article 6. Sally Hurst Dickinson will speak to Article 6, which is a request to authorize the board to retain a contingency fund. Oh, Sally, you're down there. I was looking for you over there. Way over here.
Article 6 states, to see if the school district will vote to authorize indefinitely until rescinded to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed in any fiscal year 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment in accordance with RSA 198:4-B Roman numeral 2. A majority vote is required, and the school board recommends this article. New Hampshire RSA 198:4-B Roman numeral 2, commonly referred to as the retained surplus provision, provides school districts, including multi-town school districts, with the ability to retain a portion of their unexpended appropriations, that is, surplus funds, at the end of a fiscal year. Here's how that benefits a multi-town school district such as ours. First, there is financial stability through reserve fund creation. This is the provision that allows the district to retain up to 5% of its net assessment, that is, local taxes raised for the school budget, as a reserve fund. There is also financial stability through emergency use. This reserve can be used for emergencies, unanticipated expenses, or revenue shortfalls without requiring immediate taxpayer impact through special meetings or emergency appropriations. Another benefit is tax rate stabilization. We can avoid large tax swings. By maintaining a surplus, the district can reduce tax rate volatility for towns within the district, helping to smooth out tax burdens from year to year. And we can plan for the future. The surplus can offset potential increases in taxes, particularly useful in years with higher budgetary needs or reduced state or federal funding. Third, a retained surplus allows for long-term planning and investments. We can plan for capital projects. Retained funds can be allocated for capital improvement projects, such as building repairs, technology upgrades, or equipment purchases, reducing the need to raise additional funds from taxpayers. We can invest in educational programs. The fund provides a financial cushion to support innovative educational programs or pilot initiatives without risking immediate budget shortfalls. Finally, a retained surplus allows for voter control. There's accountability. Voters maintain oversight since the decision to use retained funds typically requires approval from the school board, which is accountable to the public. And there's transparency. Retained surpluses and their uses are publicly documented, ensuring transparency in financial management. RSA 198:4-B Roman numeral 2 empowers multi-town school districts to manage their finances responsibly, reduce the taxpayer burden, and address challenges proactively, all while maintaining accountability to the community. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 6. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I thought she was coming to the microphone. Can you put a number on this?
As far as what, 5%?
Well, yeah, so is it the 30 million? So 5%
Yeah, so
of
it'd
the
be,
30 million,
yeah,
so $1.5 million bucks.
1.5 million, up to that amount, but that would be after. So if we fast forward a couple of years when we actually have, things to work with, if there was money going into the MET and the Special Ed Expendable Trust, those would be filled first, and they'd look at that, and then the board would decide up to 5% if they wanted to hold that as the retained surplus.
So does it lapse?
Yes, it has to be, well, the next year, you can't hold more than 5% of whatever the net assessment is. So that it's basically a 5% emergency fund or up to that amount.
Got it. So it can never be.
It can never be more than 5%.
more than
It's not
5%.
something that builds and that it's not like a little, account that will keep on building.
And it is the school board, so it would be similar to a MET, where
Correct.
you have to hold a public hearing, and then you
Exactly
can spend
right.
the money.
Yep, that is what the law states.
I understand, I think, what you're asking for, but I got to be really, really, really honest. You haven't earned my trust at the current. I'm not going to say that someday in the future you will, but right now you don't have my trust. So I do not support this article. Thank you.
okay, Dan York will speak to Article 7.
Kim Fortune, Webster. Just for clarification, recognizing that gentleman, I apologize, I don't know his name, that just commented. For clarification, could RSA 198:4 hyphen small b, comma 2 be read to the public here, please? So that we're clear on what exactly that is on Article 6. Thank you.
198.4-B contingency fund. A school district annually by an article separate from the budget and all other articles in the warrant or the governing body of a city upon recommendation of the school board, when the operation of the schools is by a department of the city, may establish a contingency fund to meet the cost of unanticipated expenses that arise during the year. A detailed report of all expenditures from the contingency fund shall be made annually by the school board and published with their report. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, a school district by a vote of the legislative body may authorize indefinitely until specific rescission the school district to retain any unused portion of the year-end unassigned general funds from the preceding fiscal year in subsequent fiscal years, provided that the total amount of the year-end unassigned general funds does not exceed, in any fiscal year, 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment under RSA 198.5. Prior to expending retained general funds, the school board shall hold a prior public hearing on the action to be taken with such funds. Notice of the time, place, and subject of such hearing shall be published in a newspaper of general circulation in the relevant municipality at least 7 days before the meeting is held. An annual accounting and report of the activities of the retained general funds shall be presented to the school board of the district and published in the annual report. The legislative body, the part 3 is just having to do with the city of Manchester and not the other municipalities.
No. I think it's imperative that all get read, recognizing that we all not want to know what a
legislative body of the city of
versus a
Manchester-
governing body is. Thank you.
Upon recommendation of the school committee, may authorize indefinitely until specific rescission the school district to retain year-end unassigned general funds.
Dan York will, Dan York will speak to Article 7, which is a request to add money to the Special Education Expendable Trust.
Article 7 reads, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 to be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of supporting student services, with said funds to come from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2025. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends this article. The Merrimack Valley School District is requesting voters to approve adding $300,000 to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. This fund serves as emergency reserve to ensure the district can responsibly address unforeseen and rising costs associated with special education services. The special education expense often fluctuate due to unpredictable needs, such as new student enrollments, requiring specialized services, or changes in current student support plans. These costs are critical for providing equitable education opportunities, but can create significant financial strain if unplanned. By contributing to the trust, the district aims to be fiscally responsible by preparing for unexpected expenses without disrupting other educational programs, maintain compliance with state and federal mandates for special education, minimize the need for mid-year budget adjustments or emergency measures. Your support will help ensure that all students receive the necessary resources for a successful education while keeping the district financially stable. Money can only be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund through voter approval at annual meeting, and money can be withdrawn from this fund only after a public hearing. At the public hearing, the board will provide information as to why money from the fund is being withdrawn. The board will listen to feedback from the attendees, and then at the board meeting, or at a board meeting, the board will vote to take action. I open the floor to feedback on Article 7. Thank you.
Melissa? That's okay.
I don't know who made the motion to.
Sure.
Melissa, did you want to speak to that? I'm not sure who made the motion from the board to add 300,000 when that was.
Because you can see why that's a little concerning. If we don't actually know why 300,000 is the number.
We had, I know that we had taken 500,000
Exactly.
Out.
So why 300?
because I think that the reasoning was there was not, there, it's only up to $300,000. So it's not necessarily that there will be $300,000 left. You've heard us talk about the fact that we don't have much of a fund balance. This past year, we didn't have any. So the fact that it could be up to $300,000, but it doesn't have to be $300,000.
Okay, but we're voting on 300,000.
No, you're voting on up to 300,000.
Okay.
So it could have been any number. I mean, ideally, because the special ed trust fund is wiped out now, we still have, you know, some in the maintenance expendable trust, which is definitely going to be needed for the roof on this building. You know, it could have been $1 million, but the odds of us having $1 million that would have. So I think 300,000 was a sort of a low estimate to get things started and get that fed back in.
Okay.
David? Oh.
Dave Hemingway Webster again. This and the maintenance, as you've mentioned, are from that unassigned fund.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned multiple times that that is coming in at 0. So is there any point to these articles, or are you actually expecting that you will generate this amount by the time that we hit July, which is the date that's listed here? It seems like this is we should do this, but we're not going to have funds to do it anyway.
This is for the 25-26.
Yes, and this is stating the funds available by July 1 of 2025.
Oh, that should say
Oh, it
2026.
should say
Thank you.
2026.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Excuse me.
enough.
You want to move on to
So,
the next one?
Melissa Muzzy will speak to Article 8, which is a request to add money to the Maintenance Expendable Trust.
I think this, yes, I wasn't sure it was on before, that's why I didn't speak to the special ed amount. So Article 8 is our expendable trust fund, and the article reads, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $150,000 to be added to the Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purposes of maintaining school buildings and grounds, with said funds to come from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1, 2026. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends this article. I did take the liberty of changing the date that was stated on the paper from 2025, because obviously that was an error. Yes?
Sure we can. Actually, we can.
So Article 8 is for our expendable trust fund, and in 1993, MVSD voters approved the establishment of funding of a Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund, or MET. The express purpose of this fund is repairing and maintaining the district's school buildings and grounds. The district has worked hard to craft a proactive capital improvement plan, CIP. This CIP is a valuable communication and planning tool and helps the district protect the investment represented by our buildings and grounds, an insured value of over $90 million. Feedback from the community indicates that rather than bringing larger capital expenses and projects to the voters through separate articles on the warrant, the district should save in anticipation of these future expenses. With that in mind, we are asking to reserve $150,000 from the end-of-year unassigned fund balance to be placed in the district's Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund. The money will be utilized to support the MVSD's capital improvement plan as we prepare to address expected infrastructure and building needs throughout the district. As with the other trust fund, money can only be added to the Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund through voter approval at an annual meeting. The money can be withdrawn from this fund only after a public hearing. At the public hearing, the board will provide information as to why money from the fund is being withdrawn. For example, to replace a roof at one of the schools. The board will listen to feedback from the attendees, and then, at a board meeting, the board will vote to take action. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 8. Thank you.
Bill Hines, Bosquen again. I don't think we can appropriate 26 funds here. I think the timeline here is not correct. We would be voting for a surplus that might happen this year. So I believe that what David Hemingway had told you, that if there's no money, these aren't going to get funded. So it's almost moot. But I will say that I do support these kinds of articles, and I especially support Fred and in his efforts to put together a CIP to plan ahead. It's hard to argue with somebody who puts a plan together. You know, failure to plan is a plan to fail, and he's planning. And furthermore, he has the MET there that he's managed to get you guys to fund to do stuff. And I think when everybody comes here in these buildings, we can see the kind of job that he has done over the years, and we will miss him when he is retired. So that's my 2 cents, but I think you need to
Bill.
check with your lawyer. I don't think we can do 26 funds.
Thank you, Bill. So in closing, I want to thank all of you for your support and interest. Your feedback has great impact on the budget and warrant that is brought to the annual meeting. The MVSD board will be reconvening their recessed February board meeting in a few moments. Please feel free to remain with us for that meeting. Just a reminder that the annual meeting is on Thursday, March 6th at 6:30, right? Or 7? Sorry, 7 o'clock in the MVHS gym. So Thursday, March 6th, 7 PM in the MVHS gym. Don't forget, March 6th, though, you can vote all day from 11 till 7 here at the high school. Thank you.
I never got an answer to my question from Article 3. The discrepancy from the 12-6 board packet versus this.
Oh, sorry, Julie, thank you. Can you, the amount of the superintendent's,
It's all three that are listed on here, they're all off.
why the amount of the SAU salaries, the SAU salaries and the SAU board packet, why they differ from the SAU board packet. Thank you, Julie,
Tracy.
and Randy will get back to you, and I'm sorry about that.
That was the Andover that answered that.
Oh, right.
So we'll take just a couple of minutes to get the board to do whatever they need to do, and we'll be back for the board meeting. Hi there. We'd like to get started, please.
I'll have that new one. But they, if the town can reassess, the numbers will be totally off. Well, Andy, using estimated revenue with estimated,
Thanks.
funding from the state and percentages, so.
Sam, I'll remember. If I don't remember, will you, reach out to me and say, hey, Tracy, the sesquicentennial or whatever it is. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. Way too many for me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
For the rest of
Other people were saying. I think that would have been how I would address that person that kept throwing out stuff.
I guess I can go hand this out to people.
Okay.
Well, this is just a
Thanks.
draft.
Here, I'll pass some of those down.
I know.
I'll take one.
You would have
Pass these
caught
down.
that.
I don't know, it was a date, not spelling.
Ah, touche.
So, I like to think I would.
I would like to reconvene the school board meeting from last night to right now, please. If I could have a roll call, please.
Tracy Bricky.
Here.
Vicki Jones Blanchard.
Here.
Sally Hurst Dickinson.
Here.
Eric Hansen.
Here.
Julia Jones.
Here.
Melissa Muzzy.
Here.
Jessica Wheeler Russell.
Here.
Laura Vincent.
Here.
Daniel York.
Here.
Paula Dill.
Here.
Gary Tillman.
Here.
Tracy, do you think maybe we could kind of group?
So certainly bring your microphone, and some of you can sit here in the front. We did that last year so that we have more of a, so we can actually see each other when we're chatting.
I almost should have piled you once. I'm sure you will.
Okay, so I guess nobody wants to move.
I'm going to
Sounds
move.
fine. That's just fine.
I'm going to move.
So.
Laura's moving.
Okay, thank you. So next on the agenda is the discussion of the public hearing. Anybody want to start with that?
I suppose.
Jess,
I've
go
had
ahead.
some thoughts. So I would like to address a couple of things that I heard as a theme tonight. But I will start with the budget and the requests for bending over and cutting where we can and cutting and cutting and cutting. I do not serve on the finance committee, but I went to, I think, almost every single meeting. And in that time, I also went through the budget on my own, and I tried to find a way to save bucks anywhere that would not be detrimental to our kids, okay? As we all know, special education is mandated. We cannot touch that. Collective labor bargaining agreements, mandated, can't touch that. As well as, health and benefits. I mean, pending maybe a change in provider, we can't touch that either. So what does that leave, right? Given some of the financial challenges that Randy was talking about, that making the move to have an unassigned fund balance so that we are in a better place fiscally is the right move. We risk so much by not being able to handle unexpected costs. What happens if a roof caves in and the MET is not fully funded, right? I could not think of anything other than some really, I'm not saying I want to do this. I'm saying this is something that could be. Do we cap the number of students we send over to Concord's tech program? I don't want to do that. Those programs are very valuable for career readiness, and that's our goal, is, to make sure our students are prepared, right? So I just want to be clear that I personally think this budget is basically where it has to be without starting to really affect our kids, period. I like to say, I know that Pembroke, and I don't like using other school districts in examples, but it was held up as an example, but I think it's more of a warning because if a budget is cut so drastically that you have staff that have to be left, kids' classes are in upheaval, that the administration doesn't have a lot of time to plan for that, as well as then staff are just leaving. Like, this is not, the kids are doing fine perhaps on paper, but it looks a little uncomfortable. In speaking with parents in that district, they are terrified. So I think it's not an example, it is a warning, and I really, really hope that folks understand what would have to be done if this budget is not, or if it's drastically cut. The last thing I really would like to talk to is this idea of fraud. There is not any fraud that was happening at the time.
That was with my mistake. I don't think he meant anything beyond.
Oh, I think
I know, but I'm talking about the $2 million, right? I'm going to go back to this $2 million statement that was made. That had to go through legal, and I would hope that folks who are in governmental bodies understand that when legal is involved, it takes time. That we also had to go up to the SAU. So instead of, when the administration was looking into the full extent of everything, rather than coming half-cocked with something, that we made sure it wound its way through correctly so that everything was presented correctly. Because otherwise, not quite understanding things can cause even more confusion and issues. So I don't think there was fraud around this shortfall or the timeline of the discussion. I think that it just took a little bit of time to make sure that we had all of the information correct, and we have the added part of the SAU board as a whole, which only meets twice a year. So it just took a little bit of time to get there, but we were all very clear that this had to be talked about, that we had to put information out there, and we did that. And so that's basically all I will kind of say about the public hearing.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to say about the public hearing?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I think the public had some really valid points. I think that I heard repeatedly the word trust. I think that I also heard some really good ideas about not a reduction in force, but a redesign in structure. That I think that, we talk about special ed, it's never going to go down. It's like a good Bruce Springsteen song, right? 2 steps forward, 1 steps back. It doesn't happen. So if this continues at the rate and the percentages that it is going to look like it may continue, what is the solution to the problem? It's not asking for more money. It's redesigning the programs that we have within our schools and redistributing the services that we provide through cross-training or whatever you can come up with creatively. It's thinking outside the box. So I think that, another good point was made by a gentleman in Loudon. Town budgets now are going to public hearings. They have to plan for their infrastructures to get the buses to the kids. He made a valid point. So I think that as we move forward, thinking that this 6.92% increase is, okie dokie, that we've got to rethink about how we do things across the board.
I don't believe that anybody on the board believes that 6.92% is okey dokey. I also believe that Julie has worked her darndest this year and will continue to work in the coming years to redesign how we have special ed happening here in the district. I believe that we inherited some unfortunate special ed practices, and they are being remedied due to Julie really working hard at that. So I would like to speak to also the whole idea of fraud, and I believe that there were people in this audience this evening who boarded on libel. I am disgusted that there were people out there that would think that your elected officials would actually try and pull one over on you, because that is not at all what happened. We had so many discussions on what we needed to fund this coming year. And I am just beside myself that people would talk about all the work that's gone into this and say that we are trying to pull one over on you, because that is not even close to true. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Laura? Okay.
Is this working?
Yep. Sure
Okay.
is.
This was a long hearing, but I think it was good. We explained some stuff. I mean, this is a complicated situation. This is probably the most complicated situation the district's been in since I've been on the board. And we explained it and we explained it, but sometimes you have to keep explaining it. And I think people began to understand the situation more, so it wasn't just out there. And I think people were receptive to hearing our side of the story. It was a long hearing, but I think it turned out well.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to talk about the public hearing? Anybody else on the board?
I guess I just want to toss one last thing out.
Sure.
One thing that I was heartened by was the support for increasing salaries for teachers and support staff. So I want to keep that alive and well. And when it's time to negotiate CBAs and we bring it back to the district after those have been negotiated, I'd like us to, kind of revisit this particular conversation and see what we can do for those who give their time, their energy, everything to the district and the kids.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
You don't have to touch it. It's on.
Is it now? Oh.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know. I was confused. I'm not good with microphones. I think the public hearing is an opportunity for us to also get a picture of where the confusion lies with our constituents. Clearly, we're throwing out a lot of numbers. There's a lot of information out there. There's an impact to their pocket, and they are feeling the strain just like the rest of us. Somebody pointed out that we're taxpayers too. Yes, I am. And I do take this job very seriously in terms of trying to support a budget that supports kids. As an educator, I have a strong belief that that's important. But I think we have to take this as an opportunity to say, okay, where are the confusions and how can we make them clearer? Because there is a lot of numbers here, and I got confused. We obviously got confused even on the dates at one point. So I know I messed that up. So I feel like this is an opportunity for us to, yes, we might get frustrated at some of the things that are said, especially if we don't take the time to recognize that some of it's coming from fear and confusion. So you just got to make notes of those areas that we really need to drill down into and give them more information.
Thank you, Melissa. Anybody else?
I think one more thing to that. I agree. Having this is a good way to understand where folks are maybe not quite understanding things, and it's confusing. And like Melissa, I even right up until 5:50, I was going over all of my notes, going what okay, making sure I had things down. And I do this. I spent 8 hours this weekend doing this, you know what I mean? But I think one of the more things I would like to keep doing is these graphs that are on the website right now are really, really useful to really display and show exactly what these things look like, where our budgets are going, and in the increases. It's very helpful. It's a helpful, useful tool that I've seen being shared. So it's not just even in this room, it's being distributed across our district so folks can have a good understanding of what these, the increase in budgets and stuff is like that. So I'd like to see that again next year too.
Thank you.
Is there a way for us to project that information? Because, I think everybody's looking at pieces of paper, and there was lots of pieces of paper being discussed, and we had to keep asking what specifically they were looking at. Is there a way for us as we go forward to display that information? We have that board in the library. Obviously, is there something here that like a mobile board that we can use
Yeah,
at the meetings?
For the size crowds that we get at the annual meeting, there's really nothing, but it is on the website. A lot of
I know.
those same graphics are up there. And we're going to be adding more. I'm going to do the corrected, tax rates, and we'll throw some more things up there. Maybe do one of them as a slideshow to, move some of those static things. But I think, if folks are interested, and I think we saw some increased interest here this year, hopefully they'll go on the website and take a look at those prior to the meeting. We may have them in the hall when people are waiting to come in.
Oh, that'd be great.
On some smart boards, and have them kind of going through a little slideshow just to kind of give them.
Yeah, I like that idea. It would be great to make note of that, because I do think the more visuals that we can share really does help give people a better picture of things. Like I said, it's a lot of numbers. It's a big budget, but it has a huge impact on our kids, so.
Okay, thank you. So next on the agenda is action on the proposed 25-26 budget. The whole warrant, sorry. It says budget here. But
It's on the warrant, yeah.
it should say on the warrant, I'm sorry. It should be action on proposed 25-26 warrant. And I can entertain a motion to amend anything?
I will make a motion that we pass Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as written. Oh, and, 9 as well as written. And that we modify Article 8 to, instead of reading $150,000, but read $300,000. And if I get a second to that motion, I would be happy to explain my reasoning. Up to $300,000.
So that motion is made by Jess, seconded by Laura. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so now with the understanding of what the district is looking at for addressing the roof at the high school, I think it would be prudent for us to put in, as long as the funds are there, put in a little bit more so that when we get to that point, we have a better, more of a fund balance in that expendable trust, the mains expendable trust, to kind of get ahead of being able to do the roof sooner so that it doesn't cost us money more in the long run. So that's my reason why trying to think about increasing that ask to up to $300,000.
Any questions for Jess?
Yeah, I have a concern about passing all the warrant articles as a slate. Is this Article 3, is Article 3 included in that slate?
Yes.
Are we doing
Yes.
3D? So I have an issue with putting a motion forward to putting those to vote.
I will accept a friendly amendment to remove Article 3, and we can discuss it afterwards if that's what you would like to do.
I would like that, to
Okay.
remove Article 3, and then you could pass the
So
others as.
I will.
Wait, Laura, are
wait.
you okay with that?
Yes, but I'm concerned about Articles 7 and Articles 7 and 8 and the date. I don't.
25 is the correct
Right.
date, yes.
We're gonna,
Yeah, I was confused in that final moment, but,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, there probably won't be any money, you're right, Laura.
Yep.
But we have to leave at 25.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, so.
thank you
the,
for making sure that was clarified, because that was one of the areas that I messed up on too, because we talked about it being 26, so verbally I said 26.
What did we just say? Like, after all these numbers go flying around sometimes?
Yes.
So, just to reiterate, my motion is now to move Articles 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 as is. Article 8 adjusted to read up to $300,000. And we will discuss Article 3 after.
Any other discussion on that? All those in favor of Jessica's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Any abstentions? Perfect. Okay, then, I would entertain a motion on Article 3.
Second.
So,
Well, what's
As
the motion?
is.
the motion for Article 3 is to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $51,655,151 for the support of schools, the salaries of school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of said district. The article does not include appropriations voted on in the other warrant articles. So this is just on the budget, $51,655,151. And it's been moved by Laura, and seconded by Jess.
I would just like to request a roll call vote on that, if I may.
Well, we're going to discuss first, but we can have a roll call vote, sure.
So the motion is to approve it?
The motion is to approve it. Yep. No discussion? Okay. There has been a request for a roll call vote.
Does Julia want to talk?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry,
So
Julia, it looked like you were.
So,
ready to talk.
Kristen?
Tracy Bricky,
Yes.
Sally Hurst Dickinson,
Yes.
Eric Hansen, Julia Jones,
Like yes right here?
No, we're voting
Are
on
you
the
voting
motion.
yes or no on the Article 3? To put it on the warrant?
No? Julia says no.
Melissa Muzzy,
Yes.
Jessica Wheeler Russell,
Yes.
Laura Vincent,
Yes.
Daniel York,
Yes.
Paula Dill,
I'm going to abstain.
Paula's going to abstain.
thank you, Gary Tillman. And Peggy Jones Blanchard.
No.
Thank you.
What did Gary say?
Yes. Yeah, he did. So, Kristen, can you read back the vote, please?
Sure, Tracy Bricky, yes. Sally.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Just read back the totals. I'm sorry. I wasn't very clear.
With 2 noes and 1 abstention.
Correct.
And how many yeses is that? 8 yeses.
Yes.
So 8 yes, 2 noes, 1 abstention. That motion passes. Next is public comment. Laura, if you come down here, okay, forget it.
Thank you.
He'll give you a microphone. Okay.
Thank you. I don't like standing up here like this and saying what I'm going to say, but I am very surprised that the school board or somebody didn't apologize to the people here tonight for the deficit last year. Now, I am a former bookkeeper. I've been a bookkeeper all my life. I'm not an accountant, and I don't claim to be. But that deficit should never have happened, number one. Number two, I feel none of you really understand what's going on. People aren't claiming fraud, but we want accountability, honesty, and transparency, and we don't have it. And I'll explain why. When the business administrator resigned, she did it on December 3rd. There's nothing in the minutes to indicate that, and to my knowledge, there's no minutes anywhere that indicate she resigned. It will be done in February. So I started asking for some information on the maintenance because that was over. So I got the invoices. And this is what is wrong, and this is what you don't understand. That track, which took place, the bills were paid in July and August of '24, came to over $500,000. There was no, and I'm not taking excuses from anybody. There was no RFP and there was no contract. So if that one case right there, there was no RFP and no contract, how much of that goes on in our school district? We need more openness and more honesty. And as far as the deficit, we had to drag it out of the SAU, and they posted what they posted. Other than that, I don't think anybody would have told us. And the board knew by then. And the board may have discussed it in non-public, but they never put anything. You know, you got to be more open with us. If you want us to be agreeable, you got to be more open and honest. And after 10, 12 years, I find it just doesn't happen. And somehow things have got to change. It's not all about the money. I wouldn't be standing here if I thought 100% of our kids were getting the education they deserved. I'd go home and just pay my tax bill. But we know from all the test results, every child doesn't know how to read. Every child doesn't know basic math. And somehow the basics have got to come back into our kids' lives. And as far as sports go, I love sports, but we are spending so much money in our school district on sports. Maybe it's time the parents start paying more instead of the taxpayer. I mean, with the NCIAA and all that, you have requirements for this and requirements for that. It costs a lot of money. And I think we are taking away from the basic education of our kids and putting it in other places. I think if we really looked, we could cut the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Lee? Lee's gonna say something. Lee has something to say.
Not entirely sure that this is an appropriate interaction. Lisa Laughlin from Loudon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm curious as to the board members who voted no on the budget to move the budget forward and chose to abstain. Is there an opportunity for them to discuss why? I mean, my understanding of that vote, and this could be wrong, but my understanding of that vote is merely to put it forward to the public. Mm-hmm. So is this ceremonial? I mean, why say no?
Paula, so
They don't have to
say anything. Don't forget, this is public comment.
I understand.
And there is no back and forth. So thank you, Lee.
I feel like that it would be an opportunity for you to explain to people, and I apologize because I had a work event tonight that kept me from here until 7 o'clock. So apparently I missed some fireworks, but I feel like
You missed some fun.
yeah, it always is such a good time.
Yep.
But I feel like that would be worth explaining publicly to people for us to understand why it's not a unanimous front. I mean, if you had all this time to work on it, why not say yes? So
Thanks, Lee. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Heather?
It's okay. Heather Winchell-Boscawen. Randy, I was pretty sure when we met that we voted for a 5-year contract, and it's only a 3-year in here.
No, there were two options for a 3-year and a 6-year.
Okay.
And they pared it down to go with the 3-year.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't think we ever actually got the result of that vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Bill Hines, Boscawen. I want to respond to, the comments about fraud. And it was a thought about word. It wasn't a word that I wanted to use. Sorry that I offended you. And I will take it back knowing that Randy had admitted that there was a mistake there. Mm-hmm. To see $1.5 million that was expected to be there, knowing what I know, we start with $1 million short. We go through this year. I see overages in the millions. It looked a lot like a fraud to me, just for the purpose of lowering what the expected tax rate was going to be to the people. So I'll take that word back, knowing that there was a mistake. I'll leave it there.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
Hi there, Teresa Fenimore from Webster. And I just wanted to point out, I'm sorry I did not hear the fraud comments and such, and it hurts me a lot to hear how you take that personally. But I like to point one thing out. Fraud doesn't typically happen on this level. Typically, I should say, typically it does not happen on this level. But if you truly want to make sure there's no fraud, nothing hidden, look at the individual levels, look at the programs, make sure there are contracts in place, make sure there's checks and balances in every area, and that's the best way to fight fraud. And again, please don't take that personally.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we're closing public comment. Anyone? Anyone?
I move that we adjourn. You've already
Thank you
got the
very
countdown.
much.
Yeah.
To the-